This is a public health eraser. Nothing like the social science erasers that we usually get. Anyway, we're going to be talking about something called civilian-based defense, which is one of the two ways that you can use nonviolence in large-scale armed conflict. Shannon, what is CBD in a word? Yeah, like what happened in Prague Spring. How do you define it?
Sort of like people not allowing themselves to be taken over, not
Uh-huh.
allowing someone sort of Prague Spring, not letting knowing someone's doing things wrong, so not
Uh-huh.
letting
You're starting in exactly the right place. It's disallowing an invasion. We're talking large-scale conflict here. And Prague Spring that Shannon mentioned is the classic example of this is 1968-69 in Czechoslovakia. Duh. Otherwise, why would it be Prague Spring? Where you do not try to prevent the armed force from physically entering your country, but you non-cooperate with them. And this is very effective. It kept the Soviet army, the Warsaw Pact armies at bay for 8 months. They planned to take over Czechoslovakia in 4 days. And what makes it work is you fraternize with those soldiers, and instead of saying, you know, we hate you, get out of here, and we're going to actually see scenes like this when we look at the Denmark episode in World War II. We'll see that in about a week. Instead, you say, hey, look, you know, we're revolutionaries just like you. What we're trying to do here is build communism with a human face. Why should you be here? And you absolutely non-cooperate with them as soldiers, but you absolutely accept them as human beings. So, and that's what gives civil-based defense its effectiveness. So that was very good, Tammy. That's a real underlying principle. Again, it's one of those things which, if you just did this and almost nothing else, you probably could work your way out to a whole nonviolent worldview. Okay. Alex. Right. Right. I'm going to unpack that a little bit to make it into a basic principle, but why don't you define it for us before I do?
Sure, it's when in a situation where you're so dehumanized that your opponent isn't seeing his anymore,
Yeah.
you can rehumanize yourself by instead of like inflicting harm on them,
Yeah.
not suffering yourself.
Yes, very good. What Alex said was, in a situation where your opponent has dehumanized you to the extent that they're not listening to you anymore, petitioning them is not going to work. Even if you go online and collect 1 million signatures overnight, they've already told you they're not listening. They're not even listening to Congress, much less listening to you. Then you're not without recourse. You've reached the end of one phase, and you have to go over to a phase where you look around and there's a lot of suffering in the situation, and you take some of it on. Is this fun? No. You know, we never promised you a rose garden. Nonviolence is very difficult. Obviously, you want to get started sooner before they dehumanize you that badly, so you don't have to go through this. But the fact is, we will often find ourselves in situations where it's too late. They're not listening with their head. You have to open their heart. This is all Gandhian terminology. And you do that by voluntarily taking on suffering in the situation. So you have to be very clear about two things. You are not a masochist. You don't like suffering. You're doing it because you have to. And you're not adding to the suffering of the situation. You are just using it. You're redirecting it. And as Alex said, instead of inflicting it on the other, you're taking it on yourself. And most of the really dramatic examples of nonviolence that we will be seeing and hearing about, this is what happened. For example, we'll be seeing very shortly a film about the plebiscite, the vote, referendum, I guess it was, which turned Pinochet out of power in Chile. And in order to make that happen, people had to take an incredible risk. They had to overcome tons and tons of fear. They had to go out there in the Plaza de Mayo, and stand there with a little sign saying, "Where is my son?" And when there was only 4 or 5 of them, they could have been wiped out very easily. So I would say this invokes the law of suffering. Suffering in this case was in the form of risk, a risk of physical abuse. Okay, anything else that seems to you? Well, yeah, I said I was going to unpack this a little bit. And I think what I'm getting at here is that there's a sense in which, nonviolence is an attractive, not a repelling force, and therefore, let's see, I was going to go somewhere else with that, but let's just go there for now. Oh, yeah, I remember. It operates by persuasion, not coercion. These can all be grouped, I think, under the same heading. So this is, incidentally, all these things start to talk to each other. If you're going by persuasion versus coercion, obviously it's going to take longer. So that's where you get over to the work versus work, and you have faith that it's much better to take time to persuade the person of the rightness of your view, which was never in question in the first place, than to force them to behave in a way that you want them to behave, even if they don't believe it. Because obviously the minute they get a chance to reverse that, they will. Whereas if you made it their own, if they have made it their own, that won't happen. I was once in a committee on this campus back in the days when I thought, no, sorry, I'm not going to finish that sentence. Sometime over a latte, nonviolent equivalent of a beer, and it'd get me very sentimental. We'll talk about this whole situation. But there I was on this committee, and I wanted, I was actually the chairman of the committee. Whoever put me in charge of that bitterly regretted it. And I wanted things to go in a certain way, and it was a reasonable way for it to go. There's one person on the committee absolutely adamantly opposed to this. And as long as that person was absolutely adamantly opposed, I did not try to outvote that person, which I could have done. I mean, chairman, I got enough votes. I could have said, sorry, Carl, you're outvoted. Ha ha, you lost. Something, I wasn't even all that nonviolent in those days, but somehow instinctively, it wasn't out of fear. I don't think, let's say it wasn't out of fear. It wasn't out of fear. I didn't want to reach that kind of solution. And then I went on leave, and when I came back, I was off the committee. And I thought, oh, well, that's the end of this, I've lost that. And then I ran into a colleague of mine who had been on the committee with us, and we were chatting, and he said, by the way, I want to tell you that Carl has now taken over where you left off, and he's now advocating your position. So that's a win-win situation. That's how you like it to go, and that's nonviolence. It didn't even require a whole lot of suffering in this case. Just a certain amount of ego suppression, a little anti-machismo, but not very significant amount of suffering. Okay? Well, unless you've got another one that you think is equally basic that you want to put up right now, I'd like to try and talk about the big picture for a minute. Okay, so I think this will be a very good start for us. And I'm not even sure that this next part is going to be all that easy to talk about, but I think we should give it a shot. Sorry, I think we should give it a try. You can call me on that kind of thing anytime. I think I better sit down for this. How shall I start? I'm going to start with a formula from St. Augustine, strangely enough. in his mighty work, written toward the end of the 4th century of our era, called The City of God, Civitas Dei contra Paganos, the city of God against the pagans, he repeatedly comes up with this formula. It's almost like a mantra: duo amores faciunt duo civitatis. I'll put it on the board next time. I don't feel like getting up right now. Literally, that translates: two loves create two cities. But you have to realize, first of all, that the city was the largest form of social organization known in the Roman world. The entire Roman Empire was Roman, right? It was not an Italian empire or European empire, it was the Roman Empire. It was basically one city-state expanding its domination over the world. And so he really means the entire world order. And by amor, he means what we would call probably today a drive. So he's saying that there are two drives. He's very much a person, power man. That's why I like him so much. There's two drives in every one of us, unless one of them has succeeded in overcoming the other. But for the vast majority of us, our inner life is a struggle between two drives. And our outer life is the expression of the struggle. The negative drive, which is the drive towards self-aggrandizement, blowing up the small self till it blots out everything else, that drive creates these very domineering, disordered imperial systems. I hope some of you are Frog and Toad fans, and my favorite Frog and Toad story is where, I forget which is which, of course, the Frog is giving a lecture, and Frog says, I'm the greatest, I'm the greatest. The audience consists of his one friend, who's Toad. And every time Frog says, I'm the greatest, Toad goes back about 10 rows, until finally he can hardly see him, and he feels very lonely. And he starts developing a whole different kind of discourse. We're all in this together, and I'm not better than anybody else. And every time he makes a statement, Toad comes a little bit closer until they finally get back together. Whole seminar presentations have been given on this story. This is a pretty cute way of identifying these two drives. And the point is that these really are the two motive forces in human civilization, according to Augustine. And I agree with him, obviously, or I would not have brought him in here. So this struggle that's going on in our world today has really been going on since the dawn of recorded history, if not sooner. And it is a struggle between a negative drive and a positive drive. But obviously, it's reached a certain shape, which is kind of new in our world today, and it has also reached a crisis. Of that, I think nobody has any doubt. In the 1970s, there were some forward-thinking people who began to recognize this. We had read, Kuhn's Structure of Scientific Revolutions. We used the term paradigm shift a lot, and we talked about the dominant paradigm and the emerging paradigm. So we knew perfectly well back then that the struggle was going on. But we didn't have a very good beat on it. No, I shouldn't use that. That's also a military metaphor. We couldn't get it into focus very well. There are lots of elements that were left out. Now today, that struggle is being recognized much more broadly, so that's one thing that's happening. We were a very small group of random professors, and as far as Berkeley is concerned, there's a little bit, somewhat more in Stanford. They always have more of certain things, not the X, however. And so there was a few more at Stanford, but the really prestigious places I think had none, like Princeton, Harvard, those places. I think it was a good way to lose a job at Harvard if you were thinking in these big picture terms. But the group was so small that there wasn't really much discourse. There was no web in those days. You remember these huge 75-page documents that you cranked out on these mimeograph machines and carried them around from office to office, and who wanted to read all of that? So it didn't really get off the ground. Now things are different in the sense that it's not the preserve of a few intellectuals in Berkeley. There seems to be a growing, it's not huge, but it's a growing worldwide awareness that we're hitting a wall. And this wall is not just a resource barrier, which is serious enough. I have a friend who lives somewhere in Minnesota, I think, and they were snowed in last winter, and he thought, oh, well, this is fun, can't go anywhere. I have to trudge around in your big snow boots and ski shoes and stuff. Only they noticed that 3 days later there was no more food in the stores. Then suddenly it wasn't so much fun. There was only canned goods and things like that. So we're living in a very fragile world, which is very resource dependent. And over the break, I was down in Nicaragua, and it's always a huge shock to come from a village in Nicaragua to SFO. Everything's so complicated. This huge can full of people flying through the air with, depending on all of these machines and people on the ground and stuff. It's so fragile because it's so complicated and it's so technology dependent and so resource dependent. Since somewhere in the course of PAX 164A last semester, oil peaked, right? So we're on the downslope. But I'm saying that the awareness of this is not just that it is a resource energy problem, but it is an ideology problem. It is a problem of vision. We cannot go on, if we can't go on consuming so much stuff, this means we have to change our whole image of what a human being is. Because if a human being is an open-ended stuff consumer, and the more stuff it consumes, the happier it gets, then this world has been very badly organized and we're in for some kind of disaster. So we're being almost forced to confront the spiritual emptiness of material civilization, which is great. It's an absolutely great thing. And this means that there's a dimension, there are new conversations going on which are absolutely not possible when I first became aware of this stuff in the 70s. Last July, we put on a conference here at Berkeley called the Spiritual Activism Conference, first annual Spiritual Activism Conference. Michael Lerner and myself partnered for this, and it was going to go on in July. Here it was June, and we had like 200 people signed up. We sunk all of this money and time and effort into it. Michael, who is much more Jewish than I am, he was saying, if we don't get 500 people, I'm going to kill myself. That's very Jewish. And the doors opened, and 1,400 people walked in. Nobody would have come 20, 30 years ago. They might have come to a spirituality conference, but spiritual activism, never heard of it, doesn't make any sense. And in many ways, the conversation is opening up in ways which I think are very, very healthy. And we're discovering the reason that it didn't get anywhere in the 70s is that we were just looking at material things, and we were not really getting down to what does make a human being happy, which gets down to the question of what is a human being, and what is ethics based on, things like that. Now, all this is taking place in a context of greater globalization, and this I'm sure you're totally familiar with, where, for example, I'm sitting in my room. This is a very funny story, actually. I think you deserve a joke at this point. I'm sitting in my room yesterday. I'm supposed to be writing something on the Upanishads, and it's not going very well. I'm at that very awkward stage. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know whom I'm writing this for. It's not coming. I'm staring at my computer. I'm hating it. And my phone rings. Now, the only people who know my phone number are usually people right there in my community, so I thought, I forgot to do breakfast cleanup or something momentous like that. I pick up the phone, and the voice says, is this Professor Nagler? I said, yes. And the person said, I'm calling you from Bulgaria. I want to tell you how much I've enjoyed your writing, especially on the Upanishads. I thought you'd like that. But that's not the relevant part. The relevant part, and there is one, the relevant part is you can pick up the phone, or you can look at your cell phone, and it'll be a text message, and it'll be from Amy. She's the only one who text messages me. But theoretically, it could be from my family in Nicaragua, or it could be from anywhere. Well, you know this. The world is globalizing. The old containers that hold people are starting to break down. Like the mystique of the nation state is starting to dissolve. So the struggle that's going on now is who gets to pick up the pieces of these broken institutions, and who gets to control not just a country, but theoretically the entire world. So the old struggle between the negative drive towards self-aggrandizement and the selfless drive towards openness has taken on literally global proportions. And I think that nonviolence is inherently a piece of this in at least two very important ways. One way is, I'll start with the smaller one, I don't think there's any way that this thing is going to be adjusted without a huge amount of struggle. If that struggle is the same old kind of struggle, like is going on in Iraq right now, the destruction is going to be so enormous that I'm not entirely sure we'll get through it. I don't know what will survive, something like that. If it really comes down to it, where it's like, say, the global south and its supporters against the corporate networks of the north, and they fight it out with weapons, well, it's going to be horrendous. So to have a different way of struggling, even if you knew nothing else about nonviolence, but you knew there was a different way to struggle, you could have that whole struggle take place and come to a successful conclusion with a very, very minimum of bloodshed. Yes, people got killed in India in the freedom struggle, which was the closest thing to a principled nonviolence insurrection that we're going to ever meet with, probably. But how many people got killed? In the Amritsar massacre, there was something like 235 people were killed. Maybe another 40 or 50 people got killed in the whole struggle. Whereas in Algeria, which had a population of 11 million people, 900,000 were killed. Carrying on the same same kind of struggle, but they did it violently. India did it non-violently. So if we're going to get through this struggle and come out the other end, we're going to have to fight it with nonviolent means. And that doesn't mean we have to get everybody to agree, by the way. If we do our part nonviolently, that will be enough to change the balance. The other thing I want to say, and I'll just barely mention it because we're out of time, is that I think that nonviolence is actually much bigger than this. Gandhi actually said nonviolence is not the inanity that has been taken for down the ages. Nonviolence is more than just lubricating the wheels of the struggle of globalism. It is defining the goal. It's really pointing us to the world that we want to go to. So we will come back to that toward the end of the semester. Okay, great. Good to meet you all. See you on Thursday.